Hey, hey, hey! Welcome, kiddies, to the Carnival of Terror. 6 little stories tonight, each more frightful than the last. Oh, come closer, children. It's story time. And tonight's tale is a real lucky draw. If you like your luck served cold and bloody. Once upon a time, there was a quiet little town nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling lake. It looked like any ordinary town. It had a church steeple, a barber shop, even a soda fountain. But every October, something extraordinary happened. They'd pull one name from a weathered wooden box. No one dared refuse. No one ever questioned. For everyone knew the price of defiance. The town was prosperous. The crops never failed. The mines never collapsed. The children never starved. But that prosperity came at a terrible cost. No body, no scream, no grave, just gone. The townsfolk would find solace in their misfortune, for they all knew they'd be next. And when they were, for the one who vanished had become the town's unfortunate blessing. Their sacrifice ensured the town's continued prosperity. Oh, and you, my delicious listeners, if you ever find yourself in that town, and you're asked to write your name on a slip of paper for the annual drawing, well, don't worry. It's not if your name is chosen, it's when. Hey, hey, hey. H-E. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bone Tea Horror Tales. We're this Halloween, and tonight's story is a real spooky one. So make sure you got your lights on, kiddies, because tonight's tale proves some things only come out when the power's off. Once upon a time, there was a night shift power plant worker named Eddie. But Eddie had a nasty little side hustle. Every so often, he would throw a switch, shut down a whole neighborhood, and in the dark, sneak into their homes and clean them out. Oh, he was a modern-day Robin Hood. Except instead of robbing from the rich, he robbed from the very comfortably middle class. And instead of giving to the poor, he just gave to himself. Ha-ha! Nobody ever suspected the guy who turned the lights back on was the same guy who turned them off in the first place. But one night, Eddie grinned as he pulled the lever. Block after block went black. He grabbed his flashlight, ready to prowl. That's when he saw them. Not people, not animals' eyes. The eyes blinked in unison, and then they moved closer. The next morning, the city crews found Eddie's flashlight lying on the ground, still flickering, but Eddie, he was gone. And now every time the power fails, the neighbors whisper they see those eyes waiting in the dark, just like the ones that took Eddie. Well, that was a scary story, wasn't it, kiddies? A little different from our usual, but spooky nonetheless. And remember, some things are best left in the darkness, like my bones. Hee-hee-ha. Hey-hey-hee. Thank you for watching, everybody. I'm your host, the one, the only Bone Tea. Remember, some things are best left in the darkness. And until next time, stay spooky. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bone Tea Horror Tales. We're this Halloween, and tonight's story is a real spooky one. So make sure you got your lights on, kiddies, because tonight's tale proves some things only come out when the power's off. Once upon a time, there was a night shift power plant worker named Eddie. But Eddie had a nasty little side hustle. Every so often, he would throw a switch, shut down a whole neighborhood, and in the dark, sneak into their homes and clean them out. Oh, he was a modern-day Robin Hood. Except instead of robbing from the rich, he robbed from the very comfortably middle class. And instead of giving to the poor, he just gave to himself. Ha ha! Nobody ever suspected the guy who turned the lights back on was the same guy who turned them off in the first place. But one night, Eddie grinned as he pulled the lever. Block after block went black. He grabbed his flashlight, ready to prowl. That's when he saw them. Not people, not animals' eyes. The eyes blinked in unison, and then they moved closer. The next morning, the city crews found Eddie's flashlight lying on the ground, still flickering, but Eddie, he was gone. And now every time the power fails, the neighbors whisper they see those eyes waiting in the dark, just like the ones that took Eddie. Well, that was a scary story, wasn't it, kiddies? A little different from our usual, but spooky nonetheless. And remember, some things are best left in the darkness, like my bones. Hee hee ha. Hey hey hee. Thank you for watching, everybody. I'm your host, the one, the only Bone T. Remember, some things are best left in the darkness. And until next time, stay spooky. Well, hello there, kiddies. Welcome to Bone T Horror Tales, where each week we bring you the best and worst of campfire scary stories. I'm your host, Bone T. And tonight's tale is all about time. So make sure you don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't be late, because when the clock strikes 13, you'll never leave. Once upon a time in a world much like our own, there lived a clockmaker named Mr. Halberd. Now Mr. Halberd was a proud man, mostly because of his perfect clocks, which were prized throughout the land. But he had an obsession, an antique clock that had once belonged to a wealthy nobleman. It was a towering black monster carved with the snarling faces of demons, and he spent years restoring it, fixing its gears and polishing its casing until finally it gleamed like a demon god, all set to devour the world. When it was finished, bong bong, they writhed and twisted, forming hands, dozens of hands that reached out, clawing for him. The gears ground, not with the rhythm of time. He tried to smash the clock. And then he was inside the clock tower, trapped in a world of gears and shadows. And when the sun rose, his tools lay abandoned on the workbench, and the door was ajar. But there was no sign of Mr. Halberd or the clock. Some said it was a robber's den, while others claimed it was haunted. But those who stood close to the clock tower could still hear it ticking. And if they listened closely, they could still hear the faint echoes of Mr. Halberd's screams. And sometimes, when the wind was just right, they could swear they saw the clock hands move. And that, my little pumpkins, is why when the clock strikes 13, you should never stay to find out what it means. Ha ha! Ha! Looks like Mr. Halberd learned the hard way. Time doesn't just fly, it devours. Until next time, my little nightmares, remember, some things are better left unknown, some doors are best left unopened, and some clocks are never to be wound. Ha ha! Ha!
The upyr. In the dark, mist-shrouded villages, a sinister tale unfolds. Gather round, dear readers, for a chilling story of the upyr, those bloodthirsty undead that haunt the nightmares of peasants and nobles alike. Our tale begins on a moonless night, when old Uri stumbled home from the tavern, his mind clouded by cheap vodka. As he fumbled with his cottage door, a cold wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the stench of decay. Uri froze, his blood turning to ice as he sensed an unholy presence lurking in the shadows. There, in the gloom, stood a figure both familiar and terrifying. It was Ivan, the village blacksmith who had died just last week. But this was no longer the jovial man Uri had known. Ivan's skin was a sickly gray, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly hunger. The upyr had risen. With a blood-curdling shriek, the creature lunged at Yuri, its razor-sharp fangs glinting in the dim light. Our hapless hero barely managed to slam the door shut, his heart pounding like a war drum. But the night was far from over. As dawn broke, the village erupted into chaos. Bodies, drained of blood, were discovered in their beds, throats torn open in a gruesome display. The whispers began. The upyr walks among us. Panic gripped the villagers as they barricaded their homes, desperately seeking ways to ward off the undead menace. Garlic hung from every doorway, crosses clutched in trembling hands. But would these simple charms be enough to save them from the relentless hunger of the upyr? Night after night, the attacks continued. The village priest, his faith shaken to the core, led a band of brave or foolish men to Ivan's grave. With trembling hands, they exhumed the coffin, only to find it empty. The horror of their situation truly sank in. The upyr could be anyone, anywhere. As the body count rose, suspicion and paranoia tore the community apart. Neighbor turned against neighbor, each accusing the other of harboring the undead in their midst. The once peaceful village became a powder keg of fear and hatred, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. In a twist of cruel irony, it was this very mistrust that proved to be their undoing. While the villagers fought amongst themselves, the upyr continued its reign of terror unchecked. One by one, the population dwindled until only a handful remained. And so, dear readers, we leave you with this chilling thought. In the remote villages of Ukraine, where ancient superstitions still hold sway, beware the night, for in the shadows the upyr may still lurk, waiting to quench its eternal thirst with the blood of the living. Sleep tight, and pray you never hear that bone-chilling shriek in the darkness.
Hey, hey, hey! Tonight's tale will have you tied up in knots. Kiddies! A little yarn about a man who found out the hard way who's really pulling the strings. Meet Harold Crenshaw, once a headliner, now a nobody. The only one left to listen was Mr. Chuckles, a painted wooden dummy with a cracked grin and lifeless eyes. Harold grew bitter. He drank. He shouted at the puppet when no one was around. And sometimes he swore he heard it whisper back. One night, Harold woke to a scratching noise in his workshop. He stumbled in, ready to yell at the rats. But there was Mr. Chuckles, carving. Not carving wood, no. Carving bones. Human bones. Fingers shaved into joints, ribs whittled into struts. Skull fragments sanded smooth and fitted neatly into the puppet's frame. At first, Harold thought he was losing his mind. But every night the dummy moved more. Its head tilted. Its glass eyes followed him. Its grin seemed to widen. And worse, Harold began to see himself in it. His own tired face flickering in those glassy puppet eyes, like a reflection waiting to replace him. Terrified, Harold finally snapped. He doused the workshop in kerosene, matchbook in hand. I'll burn you to ash, you evil thing. But before the flame could strike, the strings tightened. Invisible cords lashed around his wrists, his ankles, his throat. Not his own. Not the dummy's. But both blended together, as if Harold's soul was being pulled through those wooden jaws. The next morning, the workshop was silent. Only Mr. Chuckles sat on stage, head cocked, eyes sparkling with life. A brand new ventriloquist act, waiting for the next show. Hee hee hee. Looks like Harold wasn't the master after all. Oh no, kiddies. He was just the dummy. Ha ha ha. Bone Tea Horror Tale, the smiling face. Hee hee. Ready for a toothy little tale, kiddies? This one's about an undertaker who tried to save a buck. But the dead made him pay full price. Morton ran the cheapest funeral parlor in town. Families thought they were buying dignity for the dearly departed. But Morton cut corners wherever he could. He reused coffins, stuffed bodies into shallow graves, and stitched mouths in slappy, jagged lines. He even joked to his assistant, "Why waste thread? The worms don't care what they look like." But whispers spread in town. Families began to complain their loved ones looked wrong, twisted, unnatural. Morton ignored them, laughing that grief made people see what wasn't there. One stormy night, he stayed late, sewing a corpse's mouth into a grotesque grin. He chuckled, "Now that's a smile worth remembering." The lights flickered. The air grew cold. And then the other coffins creaked open. The dead shuffled out, one by one. Faces he had mangled. Lips stretched wide, bloody stitches tearing open as they grinned at him in unison. Morton backed away, trembling, until he tripped into an open casket. Skeletal hands pinned him down. Dozens of teeth clattered together, like applause in the dark. And the corpses dragged him down with them, smiling all the way. Ha ha ha! Guess Morton finally gave his customers the smiles they deserved. And it was the last laugh he ever heard. Hee hee hee. Well, kiddies, that's all for tonight's Carnival of Terror. But don't worry, the circus never leaves town. We'll be back with more stories to die for.